howling started 3 clicks north of our position, somewhere deep in the pine-covered ridgeline where no village had stood for 20 years. I pressed my eye tighter against the PVS-31 night vision goggles, scanning the tree line for movement. But the sound didn't match anything in my 12 years of combat experience. Not wolves, not wind through the mountain passes, not the wild dogs that sometimes trailed Taliban fighters through these valleys. This was something else entirely, something that made the hair on my neck stand up despite the 40 pounds of gear weighing me down. "Reaper 6, you getting this on comms?" I whispered into my radio, keeping my voice low enough that it wouldn't carry beyond our immediate perimeter. Staff Sergeant Marcus Webb crouched beside me behind the rocky outcropping, his M4 trained on the same tree line. "Affirm, Sergeant Hayes. Local elders mentioned something about the night singers in the briefing. Thought it was just mountain superstition." The temperature had dropped 15 degrees since sunset, and now, at 0200 hours, frost was forming on our equipment. My breath came out in white clouds that dissipated slowly in the thin mountain air. We were at 9,000 feet, deep in the Korengal Valley, the Valley of Death, as it had been called during the height of the war. Our mission was simple on paper: locate and extract Captain Jennifer Rourke and her 3-man ODA team who had gone silent 72 hours ago during a village outreach operation. Last known position was a small hamlet called Yakubi, nestled in a valley that had seen more American blood spilled than most people back home would ever know. But nothing about this mission felt simple. The howling came again, closer this time, and I could hear the distinct pattern: 3 long calls, then silence, then 2 short barks. It reminded me of coyotes back in New Mexico where I grew up, except the pitch was all wrong, too deep, too deliberate, almost like it was communicating. "Reaper 2, Reaper 3, radio check," I called softly to the rest of our 8-man element, spread out in a defensive perimeter around our overwatch position. 2, good copy. That was Corporal James Mitchell, our communications specialist, positioned 20 meters to my left with the SATCOM rig. 3, solid. Staff Sergeant David Park, our medic, was pulling rear security with Specialist Alex Rodriguez, our youngest operator at 23. I keyed my radio again. "Everyone stay sharp. Something's not right about this area." "Webb, you ever hear anything like that before?" Webb had spent 3 tours in these mountains before joining our unit. If anyone knew the sounds of the Hindu Kush, it was him. He shook his head slowly, never taking his eyes off the tree line. Negative, and that's what worries me. The mission briefing at Phoebe Wright had been rushed, too rushed. Colonel Davidson, our task force commander, had barely given us 6 hours to prepare before inserting us via Chinook into this cursed valley. Captain Rourke's last transmission had been fragmented, something about the village being wrong and not what it seems. Then silence. No emergency beacon, no follow-up comms, just dead air for 3 days. I pulled out my map and studied it under the red lens of my flashlight, careful to keep the beam directed downward and shielded. Yakubi was another 2 kilometers northeast, down in the valley proper. Between us and the village was dense forest, a river crossing, and terrain that had swallowed entire platoons during the war. "Reaper 6, this is Nighthawk 1. The voice crackled in my earpiece. Our AC-130 gunship providing overhead support from 12,000 feet. "Go ahead, Nighthawk. Be advised we're picking up multiple heat signatures in the tree line, approximately 400 meters north-northeast of your position. Count is difficult to establish. They're moving erratically, but they appear to be converging on your location." My pulse quickened. "Can you identify?" "Armed personnel?" There was a pause. "Negative identification. Thermal signature is unusual. Recommend you move to secondary position." Unusual. In my experience, when an AC-130 gunship crew, people who had seen every kind of combat situation imaginable, called something unusual, you listened. "All Reaper elements, we're moving. Mitchell, collapse on my position. Park, Rodriguez, maintain rear security and prepare to displace. We're heading to Waypoint Bravo." The team moved with practiced efficiency. Shadows within shadows. We had trained together for 18 months, run operations across 3 continents, and trusted each other with our lives. But as we prepared to move down the mountainside toward the village, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were walking into something none of our training had prepared us for. The howling came again, and this time it was answered by others. A chorus of inhuman voices echoing through the valley, growing closer with each passing second. 6 hours earlier, I had been drinking coffee that tasted like motor oil in the Task Force Operations Center at Phoebe Wright, watching the sun set over the mountains and wondering if this deployment would be my last. The Tactical Operations Center was crowded with officers and senior NCOs, all clustered around a digital map display showing the Korengal Valley in topographic detail. Colonel Davidson stood at the center, a phone pressed to his ear, his jaw clenched tight enough to crack teeth. I stepped closer to the map. Yakubi was marked with a red circle, deep in territory that had been contested for nearly 2 decades. "What's the last known intel, sir?" The recording played, filled with static and interference. Rourke's voice came through in fragments. "Village is abandoned. No, wait. They're here, but they're not." More static. "Something in the buildings, sir. Something that doesn't—" A sharp crack, possibly gunfire. "Falling back to rally point. They're in the trees. Oh God, they're not human. They're—" "What about the local population?" I asked. "Did anyone report seeing Rourke's team?" Davidson exchanged a glance with Chen. "That's where it gets complicated. We debriefed elders from the neighboring valley. They refused to talk about Yakubi, said the village was cursed, and that people who go there after dark don't come back. One elder mentioned the night singers, predators that hunt in the darkness." I studied the map, calculating distances and terrain. "So what's the mission, sir? Search and rescue?" "Search and rescue, with reconnaissance as secondary objective. I'm sending your team in light and fast. 8 operators, full combat load, 48-hour time limit. You insert via Chinook at LZ Eagle, 3 clicks west of Yakubi. Move in on foot, locate Rourke and her team. Extract immediately. If you encounter enemy forces, you have clearance to engage. But priority is getting our people out." "Rules of engagement, sir?" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The briefing continued for another hour. We reviewed aerial imagery, studied topographic maps, established radio frequencies and extraction protocols. Mitchell set up our communications equipment. SATCOM, AN/PRC-152 radios, GPS beacons, and a backup CSL beacon in case everything went to hell. Park checked medical supplies, trauma kits, morphine, antibiotics, and enough bandages to treat a platoon. Rodriguez and Specialist Kevin Grant, our heavy weapons specialist, prepped the ammunition and explosives. Webb coordinated with the AC-130 crew that would provide overwatch. The weight settled on my shoulders like an old friend. 60 pounds of gear that could mean the difference between life and death. As the sun disappeared behind the mountains, we loaded onto the MH-47 Chinook for insertion. The helicopter's twin rotors beat the air with a rhythmic thump that I felt in my chest. Staff Sergeant Emma Cross, our second team leader, sat across from me, checking her rifle for the 3rd time. "You feel it too?" she asked over the rotor noise. "Feel what?" "That something's off about this mission. The way Davidson looked, the way that intel officer couldn't meet our eyes. They know something they're not telling us." I had thought the same thing but hadn't wanted to voice it. "Maybe, but our job isn't to question intelligence. Our job is to bring Rourke and her team home." Cross nodded, but didn't look convinced. The Chinook fled, hovering 50 feet above the rocky LZ. The ropes dropped, and one by one we descended into the darkness. My boots hit solid ground, and I immediately took a knee, scanning my sector through night vision. The helicopter banked away, its rotor wash kicking up dust and debris. Then silence. Not natural silence, oppressive silence. The kind where even the insects stop chirping, where the wind seems to hold its breath, where you know deep in your gut that you're being watched. Reaper 6, all elements on the ground. Chinook is RTB. Mitchell reported to our TOC. Copy, Reaper 6. Proceed to objective. Nighthawk 1 will be on station in 15 mics. Good hunting. I took point, moving northwest toward our overwatch position. The terrain was rocky and uneven, covered with scattered pine trees and patches of snow that hadn't melted despite the spring season. Every shadow seemed to move. Every sound seemed amplified in the thin mountain air. That's when I first heard it. The howling. Distant, eerie, wrong. And that's how we ended up here, crouched behind rocks at 0200 hours, listening to something inhuman closing in on our position. Reaper elements, move now. Heading 045 degrees, maintain dispersion. Weapons tight until I give the word. I kept my voice calm, professional. Despite the adrenaline flooding my system, the howling continued, now coming from multiple directions. 3 distinct groups, maybe 4, coordinating their movements. That alone should have been impossible. Wolves didn't hunt like this. Neither did wild dogs. This was tactical encirclement, the kind of maneuver you saw from trained fighters, not animals. Nighthawk 1, Reaper 6. What's your visual on those heat signatures? Reaper 6. We count 12. No, 15 distinct contacts. They're moving in a coordinated pattern, approximately 3 groups of 5. Speed is consistent with human movement, but the thermal profile is off. Warmer than ambient, but cooler than normal body temperature. I processed this information while navigating around a fallen log. Cooler than normal body temperature meant either they were wearing thermal camouflage, Unlikely in this terrain, or they weren't human. But that possibility lived in the realm of speculation I wasn't ready to enter. Can you engage if necessary? Negative, Reaper 6. They're too close to your position. Danger close parameters. We'd be putting rounds within 50 meters of your element. Shit. That meant we were on our own if this went kinetic. Copy, Nighthawk. Keep tracking them and update me on any changes. We reached the river 20 minutes later. A fast-moving stream swollen with snowmelt, about 15 feet across. The designated crossing point was a series of flat rocks that created a natural bridge. But the water rushed past with enough force to sweep a man away if he slipped. Cross, take 3 operators and secure the far bank. Webb, you're with me on this side. Mitchell, Rodriguez, Grant, you cross with Cross. Park stays here with me until everyone's over. The team executed the movement with practiced efficiency. Cross went first, her weapon up and ready, stepping carefully across the slick rocks. Mitchell followed, the SATCOM rig making him slightly unbalanced, but he made it across without incident. Rodriguez and Grant crossed next. That's when the howling stopped. Complete silence descended on the valley. Even the river seemed to quiet, as if nature itself was holding its breath. Reaper 6, be advised. Nighthawk 1's voice crackled with urgency. All 15 contacts have stopped moving. They're stationary in a perimeter formation around your position, approximately 200 meters out. They're just waiting. My blood ran cold. I had been in enough ambushes to know what this meant. We had walked into a kill zone, and whatever was out there had just sprung the trap. All elements, weapons free. Cross, get your people to cover on that side. Webb, Park, with me. We're crossing now. Contact! Movement in the tree line. 50 meters north. I looked up and saw it, a shape emerging from the shadows between the trees. At first I thought it was a person, tall and bipedal, but as it stepped into the moonlight, my brain struggled to process what I was seeing. Open fire! Cross's voice shattered the silence. The night erupted with muzzle flashes. I saw Cross and Mitchell engage the creature, their rounds finding center mass. But instead of going down, it twisted sideways with inhuman agility and disappeared into the shadows. What the fuck was that? Rodriguez's voice cracked with fear. I jumped the remaining distance to the far bank, nearly losing my footing. Webb and Park splashed through the water behind me. Defensive positions, back to back, night vision up, look for movement. I jumped the remaining distance to the far bank, nearly losing my footing. Webb and Park splashed through the water behind me. Defensive positions, back to back, night vision up, look for movement. The team formed a tight perimeter, each operator covering a sector. Through my night vision, I scanned the tree line, looking for any sign of the creature. My finger rested on the trigger, ready to engage. Nighthawk 1, did you see that contact? Affirm. Reaper 6. Thermal shows it moving east, circling your position. Wait, we're seeing movement from all contacts now. They're closing in, moving fast. Then they came out of the darkness. Not one, but 5 of them, emerging from different positions in the tree line. Same massive size, same wolf-like features, same amber eyes that seemed to glow with intelligence. They moved with pack coordination, keeping distance between themselves and us, testing our perimeter. One of the creatures let out a sound, not a howl this time, but something between a growl and human speech. It was trying to communicate, forming sounds that almost resembled words. The others responded in kind, their voices creating a chorus of guttural syllables that made my skin crawl. They're talking to each other, Park said, his medical training making him observant of details others might miss. That's not animal behavior, that's language. The largest creature, the alpha, I assumed, took a step forward. In the green wash of night vision, I could see its muscular structure, the way it moved with both human and animal characteristics. It raised itself to its full height, towering above us, and opened its mouth to reveal rows of sharp teeth. Then it spoke. Not in any language I recognized, but the intent was clear. A challenge, a warning, a promise of violence. Reaper 6, this is Nighthawk 1. We're tracking 10 more contacts moving in from the north. You need to extract now. We can provide covering fire, but you need to move. I made the decision in a fraction of a second. All elements, fighting withdrawal. Maintain fire discipline bound by pairs. We're heading northeast toward Yakubi. It's our only chance. Mitchell, call in that covering fire from Nighthawk. On it, Nighthawk 1. Reaper 6 requests immediate fire support. Danger close, north of our position, marking with infrared strobe. Mitchell pulled out an IR strobe and activated it, placing it on the ground. From our perspective, it was invisible. Through the AC-130's advanced optics, it would shine like a beacon. Copy, Reaper 6. Rounds out in 30 seconds. Clear the impact area. Move! 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 I shouted, and the team began bounding backward, 2 operators covering while the others moved. The creatures watched us, their amber eyes tracking every movement, but they didn't charge. Not yet. Then the AC-130 opened fire. The 25mm cannon rounds impacted the tree line with devastating effect, each shell exploding with deadly precision. Trees shattered, the ground erupted, the creatures scattered, moving with incredible speed to avoid the fire. But they didn't flee, they adapted. As we moved through the forest toward Yakubi, I realized with growing horror that we weren't escaping. We were being herded. The creatures were using the AC-130 fire to push us in a specific direction, toward the village, toward whatever had happened to Captain Rourke and her team. We reached the outskirts of Yakubi 30 minutes later, exhausted and low on ammunition. The AC-130 had expended nearly 1,000 rounds trying to keep the creatures at bay, but they were too fast, too intelligent. Every time Nighthawk 1 thought they had a clean shot, the creatures would vanish into terrain that shouldn't have provided adequate cover. "Hold position," I ordered, raising my fist. The team took knee behind a low stone wall that marked the village boundary. Through night vision, I could see that Yakubi was intact. No battle damage, no signs of fighting. But it was completely silent. No dogs barking, no generators humming, no sounds of human habitation whatsoever. "Mitchell, try to raise Rourke on her personal frequency." Mitchell adjusted his radio and transmitted, "Viper 6, Viper 6, this is Reaper 6 on Covered Freak. How copy?" Static. He tried again. Still nothing. "Nighthawk 1, what's your thermal reading on the village?" "Reaper 6, we're showing approximately 40 heat signatures inside the main compound structure, but the temperature profile is wrong. Too cold for living humans. Could be bodies, but they're showing some kind of minimal thermal activity." My stomach tightened. 40 bodies. That was far more than Captain Rourke's 4-person team. That was the entire village population. What about those creatures? Where are they? "Lost contact when they entered the village. Too much thermal interference from the structures. They could be anywhere." She wasn't wrong. Every tactical instinct I had was screaming at me to retreat, but Captain Rourke and her team were in there, and if there was even a chance they were still alive. "We didn't come this far to turn back," I said, "but we're doing this smart. Grant, Cross, Webb, you 3 hold this position. Establish a strong point and prepare for extraction. If we're not back in 30 minutes, you RTB and report everything you've seen. Mitchell, Park, Rodriguez, you're with me. We go in light. Grab Rourke if she's there and get out. Clear?" The team nodded, though I could see the fear in their eyes. We all knew this might be a one-way trip. I checked my rifle one more time, ensuring a round was chambered. "Mitchell, switch to Vox comms. I want continuous open channel. If something happens, everyone hears it." "Copy that." We moved toward the village entrance, weapons up and ready. The main gate stood open, hanging slightly askew on its hinges. The courtyard beyond was empty, but I could see drag marks in the dirt, dozens of them, all leading toward the largest building at the center of the compound. "Blood," Park whispered, kneeling beside one of the drag marks. He touched the stain and brought his fingers up to examine them. Old, at least 2 days. Consistent with traumatic injury. The howling started again, but this time it came from inside the village, from the central building. Multiple voices creating a chorus that resonated with harmonics that shouldn't have been possible from animal vocal cords. "They're calling others," Rodriguez said. "Like wolves calling their pack." But these weren't wolves. I had seen enough to know that whatever these creatures were, they existed in some nightmare space between human and animal, possessing intelligence and physical capabilities that defied natural explanation. We approached the central building carefully, using proper clearing procedures. Mitchell stacked on the left side of the door. I took the right, with Park and Rodriguez providing rear security. The door was already open. Inside, the smell hit us first. Copper and decay, mixed with something musky and animal. I swept my rifle through the doorway, night vision revealing a large room that had been converted into, what? A nest? A den? The floor was covered with torn clothing and equipment. I recognized the patterns. American military uniforms, tactical gear, weapons that had been bent and broken like toys. "Rourke's gear," Mitchell said quietly, pointing to a plate carrier bearing the name Tape Rourke, but no bodies. The thermal signatures Nighthawk 1 had detected must be coming from deeper in the building. We moved through a doorway into a corridor. The walls were scratched and gouged, marked with what looked like claw marks. Every few meters, we found more evidence of the missing soldiers. A boot, a weapon, a helmet with a bloody handprint. The corridor opened into a larger chamber, and that's where we found them. 40 villagers, arranged in neat rows on the floor. They were alive. I could see their chests rising and falling with shallow breaths, but they were unconscious, their eyes moving rapidly beneath closed lids as if trapped in nightmares. And standing among them, barely recognizable, was Captain Jennifer Rourke. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her uniform was torn and blood-stained. Her eyes were wild, darting around the room with feral intensity. In her right hand, she held a knife. Not a standard issue blade, but something carved from bone, covered with symbols I didn't recognize. "Rourke," I said softly, keeping my weapon lowered but ready. "It's Sergeant Hayes. We're here to extract you. Where's the rest of your team?" She focused on me, and for a moment I saw recognition in her eyes. Then something else. Fear. Horror. Maybe madness. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered. "You should have left us here. Left them here." "Captain, what happened? Where are your men?" She laughed. A broken, hollow sound. "My men? They're here. They're everywhere. They became part of it. Part of the pack." "Part of what pack?" Rourke pointed at the unconscious villagers. "These people made a deal generations ago. Protection from their enemies in exchange for tribute. They feed them. Not food. Something else. Memories. Dreams. Souls, maybe. I don't know the right word for it. My team and I, we interrupted the feeding. We threatened the arrangement. So the pack decided to show us what they really are." "Rourke, you're not making sense. We need to get you out of here. Medical evaluation. Debrief." "You're not listening." She stepped closer, her eyes blazing. "They're not animals. They're not even fully physical. They exist in some space between states, between forms. The villagers worship them as spirits, as demons, as ancient protectors. But they're real. They're here. And they don't want us to leave." A howl echoed through the building, much closer now. "Captain, we don't have time for this. We're taking you and these villagers back to base. We'll sort everything else out later." Rourke shook her head. "You can't take them. If you try to remove them during the feeding, they'll die. Their minds will shatter. Trust me. We tried with the first few. Their screams." She trailed off, lost in memory. Park moved forward, his medic instincts overriding caution. "Let me examine you, ma'am. You might have a head injury, possible concussion." "I'm not concussed," Rourke snapped. Then quieter. "I wish I was. I wish this was all a hallucination. But it's real. Every impossible thing you've seen tonight is real." Rodriguez suddenly grabbed my shoulder. "Sarge, we've got movement. Multiple contacts surrounding the building." Through the doorway, I could see shapes gathering in the darkness. Dozens of them, maybe more. The amber eyes reflected in the moonlight, creating a constellation of predatory intelligence, Reaper elements. "This is Reaper 6. We have the package, but we're surrounded. Nighthawk 1, I need immediate fire support on the village perimeter." "Negative, Reaper 6. We can't engage without confirmed hostile action. Current ROE requires visual confirmation of weapons or direct threat to friendly forces. Those contacts aren't carrying weapons and haven't made any aggressive moves toward your position. Bureaucracy was going to get us killed." The creatures began to enter the building, moving with deliberate slowness. The Alpha, the one I had seen earlier, led the pack. It walked upright now, its posture more human than before, as if it was choosing its form based on the situation. When it spoke, its voice was a blend of growl and human speech, accented and awkward, but unmistakably words. "You take her." It pointed at Rourke. "You go, not return." I kept my rifle trained on the Alpha but didn't fire. The creature had just offered us an exit. Question was, could we trust it? "Mitchell, you getting this?" I asked quietly, making sure Command was recording the audio. "Affirmative. Every word." The Alpha creature took another step forward, and I could see details that my brain still struggled to process. Its fur rippled like water, as if it wasn't quite solid. The bone structure beneath seemed to shift and reform moment to moment. This wasn't just a creature. It was something that existed between states of being, just like Rourke had said. "You speak English," I said, keeping my voice steady. "That means you understand what I'm saying. We don't want conflict. We just want to take our soldier and leave." The Alpha's head tilted, studying me with those unnatural amber eyes. "You're soldier, break, peace, watch, sacred, time, we, show, mercy, take, go, speak, others, stay, away."